Good afternoon. We'll get going in just a moment. Let me know if you can hear okay with a thumbs up in the chat. That would be fabulous. We've been having some interesting tech issues, you know, start of term and all of that. Of course there are. So let me know. The joys of being popular, eh? The joys of being popular. Okay, we will get going in just a moment. If you can hear me, let me have a thumbs up in the chat. That would be wonderful. I'll be really grateful. Make sure that that's all okay. And then we will get sharing what has been going on, what is going on, what we need to keep an eye out for over the next few weeks and months. Okay, we have a lot of people joining us, but I think they'll come along as and when. So let us get started. So welcome to this first safeguarding briefing of the academic year, September 2023. I apologise in advance. We may be joined by a golden retriever or two during this broadcast. They are not in school today. They are not terribly sure why they're not, but they aren't. So who is a safeguarding association? Well, we are specialists in supporting those professionals who work with 15 to 25-year-olds. It's a delightfully grey area as far as the legislation is concerned. It is challenging, and it really appeals to me. And we get some really, really good results working with professionals in this sector. So who am I? Who's talking to you? Well, my name's Kate Flounders. I have 25 years legal experience. I am a practicing solicitor now, and I have founded the Safeguarding Association. I'm safeguarding trustee for Cordwell Youth, and I'm also an independent safeguarding chair for a number of college safeguarding boards as well. And you'll see there my two delightful golden retrievers. That's Russ and Sam, who are with us there. Okay, so we work our briefings through as overviews. We will make sure that as far as possible, I'm giving you an overview of what's happened and what is coming. That we'll break it down into three parts. So what reports are there, what guidance is there, and are there any legal updates that you need to be aware of? So depending on where you are, either move yourself somewhere quiet or put some headphones in. And if you're here live, feel free to ask a question or to use the chat function, do that, or the Q&A function to do that as well. All right then, so what has been happening? Well, we've just come out of the 6 weeks holidays for those of you working within education. For some of you, that is a quieter time. For others of you, it is chaos. And is the only opportunity you get to do all of that stuff that you don't get to do during term time. I hope that you've had an opportunity for a break. I hope that you've managed to get out of work mode for at least some of it. And I really hope that there haven't been any serious incidences that you have had to deal with over the summer. So let's dive into some of the reports that are out. Now, we are about to enter the autumn term, which classically is when all of the big reports come out. Now, we don't have that as yet. That will probably be either my next briefing or certainly the briefing after that. These are every 6 weeks, that you will get an idea of what the outcome of those reports are. So the big ones like the Good Childhood Report from the Children's Society is always one to watch as well when you're working with older teens and young adults. A new report has been published that in light of what we've seen in the press over the last few weeks in terms of inappropriate behaviour by teachers, We saw a male teacher be sent to prison for inappropriate messaging to a pupil. This report may not be quite as shocking as it appears at face value. So the University of Greenwich, along with a number of other partners, has conducted a piece of research on teacher-perpetuated sexual misconduct across UK and the Republic of Ireland. I'll link to the actual report in my Safeguarding Insider that comes out later this week. But you can Google this and you'll find the report there. There were 593 responses. And of those 593 responses, the vast majority were young women retrospectively commenting on what had happened to them whilst they were in education. 95% of these respondents said they had experienced sexist harassment by a teacher, and 85% of these respondents, had experienced sexual harassment by a teacher. And I think we can look at this one of two ways. Either we can say this is a really small number given the hundreds of thousands of teenagers who go through secondary education, and probably not something we need to worry about. Or we can say this is a decent proportion, regardless of what percentage of the overall cohort of young people in the country. This shouldn't be happening to any of them. School should be a safe place. And I've seen, as you will have seen, hundreds of back to school photos. I have massive issues with that, particularly where they're identifying features. But school should be a safe place for children, regardless of their age, regardless of whether it's independent or an independent school or a state school. It shouldn't matter. They should be safe where they go. And this sort of behaviour must be tackled. I haven't dug into the depths of the report around what that sexual harassment actually looks like as yet. But in terms of sexist harassment, these are the sorts of things that we absolutely need to be calling out. And this is when we talk about that culture of vigilance, that being aware of what's happening in and around our schools, in and around our universities, our colleges, or our sports clubs. This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about it being a safe place for people to say that behaviour is inappropriate and needs to be rooted out. So this is new research. It fits, as far as I'm concerned, with what we're seeing within the mandatory reporting of sexual abuse that's ongoing, that's coming out from the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse. It also fits around proper issues around awareness and around things like healthy relationship studies, all of those things. Anthony, I can see you've got a hand up. That's fabulous. Can you pop your question in the chat for me, please? And I will do my best to answer it for you. I'd be very, very grateful. So this is where this all fits together. It is worrying, but I think it highlights something that lots of people have been aware of for a very long time. And these aren't isolated incidences. I think that's the thing we need to be aware of. These aren't isolated incidences. These are things that are going on across the country. This is a UK and Republic of Ireland wide study. So this is huge. Working together to safeguard children, which outside of keeping children safe in education covers pretty much everybody else who works with under 18s. And so that includes your sports clubs, your dance clubs, your karate clubs, your community groups, all of those. There's been a consultation around changes to that, and that ends tomorrow, the 6th of September. So if you've not yet pressed submit on your response, then do so this evening to make sure it counts. And latterly, the mandatory reporting of sexual abuse. The responses have now finished. We're due to have the collated responses published within 12 weeks of it finishing. So that will be sometime kind of November, December-ish. that we will get those responses. So as soon as we know what they are, I will let you know, and I will obviously raise it within a briefing, and I will talk about it and let you know as part of our Safeguarding Insider as well. So that's a high level look at some of the reports that we have got going on. Where are we then in terms of guidance? Well, 1st of September, Keeping Children Safe in Education 2023 became mandatory statutory guidance. Now, I've talked previously about some of the themes within this, and I would urge you to go and have a look at my blog on the website about what those themes are. Essentially, there are, I suppose, there's a couple of areas that I will highlight for you that if you've not picked up on yet, you really do need to pick up on. One is the filtering and monitoring systems, and that the responsibility for understanding how they work and what they do falls squarely within the DSL's remit, rather than what's been happening previously, for very understandable reasons, where it's gone to the IT departments and they've been looking at, and often they go out to third-party software that is looked at as well. So that's the big one. Monitoring and filtering sits there. The other area to be aware of applies if you are an institution caught by Keeping Children Safe in Education, which could include if you're an apprenticeship provider. If you are renting your spaces out to groups where children are engaged, so community groups, sports groups, dance clubs, swimming clubs, those kinds of things. There are 2 new paragraphs added to the document, and basically it puts a responsibility on the institution who is renting their space out to make sure that there are appropriate safeguarding arrangements in place by the other institution. So by the organisation that is hiring the space, the space that's doing the hiring needs to make sure that they've got appropriate safeguarding in place. Quite how this is going to be policed, I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me to find that Ofsted starts asking for details of your hire agreements. This is something I'm working on with a number of our Safeguarding Leaders Hub members, because it is, it could be enormous. It doesn't necessarily need to be, but it does need some careful thought around what it actually looks like. So be aware of that. For some of you who are bigger, you might need to have a look at your commercial agreements. The other thing to say about this and the monitoring and filtering side of things is when I first saw this, and you'll see from the blog that I wrote at the time, this very much smacked of the protect duty, which was talked about a few years ago now, in all but a different name. What I also think this is doing, and the implications it will have, are going to be around other forms of abuse, particularly around child sexual abuse. That is coming on. So there are a number of things to consider there with this new updated guidance. The changes are minimal, but the changes that have been made are not necessarily that minimal in terms of impact. So it's having a think about those. So Anthony, you mentioned the sexual harassment cases. Can I provide any examples of the behaviours by teachers? So what we are seeing, and one of the things that is coming out of Keeping Children Safe in Education and working together, is around the behaviours. So again, that culture of vigilance that I talked about, things like, and I see this a lot with higher education actually, the communication. Are they sharing personal information? Are they, how are they greeting? So I was talking to somebody the other week, and they had a pupil who was, or a student who was helping out on an open day, and the teacher, lecturer, hadn't seen them for a while, so greeted them with an enormous bear hug, and said, hi, whoever, really, really lovely to see you, right in front of the safeguarding lead. Thankfully, the other student was okay, but the lecturer had no idea that his behaviour was inappropriate. He'd done it perfectly innocently, but had no understanding that what he'd done could be seen as inappropriate and potentially sexual in nature. We're seeing a lot around text messages being sent. We're seeing a lot around images being shared or being requested. I'm hearing stories of teachers who are finding pupils who are over the age of consent on dating apps, things like Tinder or Grindr, and arranging meetups outside of the education establishment, inviting them to parties, inviting them to dinners, things like that going on. But a lot of it is really low level. A lot of it is just text messages, is stuff that you probably would never see unless somebody showed it to you. There may be some behaviours that you would see, but that's the sort of thing we're talking about here. Is it doesn't have to be big and glaringly obvious. It's about noting somebody's behaviour and their responses to a particular individual and seeing whether or not there's something else there that needs to be looked at. In terms of keeping children safe in education, it is, part 1 is mandatory reading for everybody who is caught by keeping children safe in education. And I mean everybody, from the school caretakers right the way up to the chair of governors, including the head, to try and make life easier, because I know it's a fairly chunky document, even just part 1. As an individual, on the website, you can download an audio version of part 1. If you want to share it with the entire school, there is a whole school license on there as well. So that's available, but it's only part 1, because to do the entire document would have probably been an hour's worth of audio, if not more, and it's massive. So part 1 is available by way of audio for you. Updated guides, updated guidance on parental responsibility for schools and local authorities. This is still something, if I put my lawyer hat on, this is still something that I see schools and local authorities getting wrong. If you're at all unsure about parental responsibility, go and have a look at this guide. I'm sure I've got a 5-minute masterclass on YouTube on parental responsibility as well, so take a look at that. There's updated guidance on placing children and deprivation of liberty safeguards that need to go on as well. Updated guidance on inspecting the teaching of protected characteristics. There's also updates around the inspection where they think that pupils are being segregated by way of sex. We've got updated guidance around supported accommodation for vulnerable teens and young adults. And there's a change to the special educational needs coordinators mandatory qualification. That kicks into play as of 2024. That is being taught. Now, what we do not have yet, because I've been searching for it this morning, if it's there, I can't find it, is the government's promised, the DfE's promised guidance on transgender for schools. It's not there. They promised us it would be in place over the summer. It's not. I rather suspect that what is going to happen is via the back door, with inspecting protected characteristics and segregation by sex, there is going to be something mentioned within them that alerts us to what to do in terms, or what the guidance is around transgender for schools. So when the segregation by sex and the updated version around that the guidance for schools is published. It's currently being updated. Take a look and have a bit of a dig, because I think rather than give us a standard document, I would love them to. I think it's going to end up being squirreled away in other documents. So just be aware of that. Okay, now let's have a look at some of the legislation. So that's an overview of the guidance we've got going on. Where are we in terms of legal updates? Well, online safety bill is still making its way through Parliament. I was hoping this would be here, and I was hoping that this would be dealt with. However, it gets its third reading, I think, in the House of Lords tomorrow. And then, depending on what happens there, it will go back to the House of Parliament with suitable or the recommended amendments that will have been made by the House of Lords. I mentioned previously the Illegal Migration Act has received royal assent. What we've had is some guidance from the courts that the housing of migrant children actually falls to the responsibility of local authorities, not the Home Office. So even if the Home Office place these children in unsuitable accommodation, it is the responsibility of the local authority to move them and to look after them. That is causing an absolute headache for local authorities. And in particular, if we look at what's happened with Birmingham, where they've just been made bankrupt or just applied for bankruptcy, this is going to have a huge impact on local authority finances. It's an enormous task. So be aware of that. And then hot off the press, as I was coming on to Zoom, I got an alert on my phone that the government has decided that nitrous oxide, you know, those laughing gas, those little cylinders, silver cylinders, put my teeth in, silver cylinders, those little canisters, are by the end of 2023 to be a Class C drug. What the researchers told the government is that nitrous oxide is the second most used drug by older teens to cannabis. So they're going to make it a Class C drug by the end of the year. So update your tutorials, make sure that they are aware of this, in the same way that you alert them around the use of cannabis on and around your sites as well. That is it in terms of big things that are going to affect you. There will be, as happens all the time, if there are changes this time of year, this autumn term always is a busy term for updates, for sharing information, for guidance. So as they come out, I will let you know. Any members of the Safeguarding Leaders Hub, if there's any major legislation changes or guidance changes, I will, as ever, do a separate webinar for you. If you would like to come and join our Safeguarding Leaders Hub, then send me an email and let's have a conversation about whether it's a good fit for you. Some updating training for you. All of these are updated to the 2023 guidance and will continue to be updated as we go through. The DSL, Designated Safeguarding Lead Refresher, is on the 21st of September. We've still got some places on that. If you are a trainer and you deliver safeguarding lead training, then I'm running an update session on the 12th of October. It's a full day session. We'll go through the raft of changes that have happened, what's coming up next, and basically give you a space to share good practice as well with your fellow trainers. And then our next initial designated safeguarding lead training is the 29th and 30th of November 2023. So if you have a desire to come and join us on any one of those, or come and be part of our Safeguarding Leaders Hub, then send me an email. You'll find me, if you do hello@safeguardingassociation.com, that will find me, and we can have a conversation about how best I can support you throughout this next academic year. All that's left for me to say is thank you. And I hope you found this useful, and I will see you hopefully in 6 weeks' time. Take care, everybody.